although you and I just created a perfect selection here, and we used that transform selection command inside Photoshop, sadly, don't forget that that was a digression, wasn't it? So we actually don't need this selection. I wanted to show you that transform selection tool, though. So I'm just going to minus out here, command minus out to zoom out, and I'm going to deselect command D or control D. And it's this piece of metal here, this curved piece of metal that I'm now after. What I want to try and do is I want to try and select this guy, obviously. So I'm going to zoom in on him, this fella right here. Now, you know, when I'm making selections inside Photoshop, and usually it's, you know, objects and photos, birds or cars or people or whatever. But whatever it is that I'm trying to select, I always run through my different options in my head. It's almost like a process of elimination that I use anyway. So I look at something like this and I go, all right, could I use my elliptical marquee tool, the tool that you and I have been using up until this point, to select this object? Well, no, not really. It's not really a circular shape. Even though it's curved, it's not really a circle, is it? And then I go, all right, well, could I use my rectangular marquee tool? Well, no, I couldn't use that guy either. Well, all right. Well, what else could I do here? Well, we haven't talked yet about the lasso tools. We have the freehand lasso tool, the polygonal lasso tool, and then we also have the magnetic lasso tool. I suppose one of these guys might work on something like this, but I want to show you another tool called the magic wand tool. And what I like so much about the magic wand tool is he creates selections based on color. And you'll find your magic wand tool kind of buried inside your toolbox, hidden underneath the quick selection tool. And the quick selection tool is a very cool tool. We'll get to him in just a little while. So make sure you flip over to your magic wand tool. Now, as I say, this guy creates selections based on color. So for example, maybe I want to select a red shirt that someone's wearing, or a blue car that's in the background, or something like this, right? Or in my case, a rusted metal object. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm simply going to bring my cursor maybe over here somewhere, and I'll try single clicking on my object. And you can see that part of the object gets selected. Now, you might have a slightly different selection than I have here, but I definitely have marching ants, but I definitely didn't get the entire object either. So let me show you how this guy works here, how he selects color. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and deselect, get rid of my marching ants for a second here. So you can use your keyboard shortcut. We're going to do a lot of deselecting here in the next while. So Control D or Command D to get rid of your marching ants. And have a look at your options bar up across the top of your screen. And notice that we have a tolerance field here. Now what the tolerance value does is controls how much color gets selected. So in other words, if I have a very high tolerance and I click on a light blue, then all light blues, mid blues, and dark blues would all be selected. If I lower the tolerance and I click on a light blue, only light blues would be selected. I'm kind of simplifying it here for you, but that's kind of the idea. So I want to experiment a little bit with the tolerance setting here, and I'll show you how this impacts our selection. So my tolerance right now is actually quite high. It's at 60. I'll bet you yours is at the default, which is 32. But what I'd like you to do here is select your tolerance value and drop it down to just 10. And then hit enter on your keyboard to lock in that change. And then come back down to this curved piece of metal here and try to click in roughly the same spot that you clicked in previously. Try single clicking. And you can see I get this tiny, paltry selection here. No good at all. So that's what lowering the tolerance does. I'm going to deselect once again, Control D or Command D. Let's go and change our tolerance now to, let's try 50. So I'm going to bring mine all the way up to 50, enter. And again, try and click on roughly the same area there if you can. All right, now we get an even larger selection, don't we? A much better selection than you and I just got previously, right? Okay, that's fantastic. That's great. All right, let's try this one more time. I'm going to deselect again, Control D or Command D. Head back up to the tolerance value up on the options bar. And let's try bringing this guy up to 60 and then enter on your keyboard. And then again, roughly in the same spot here, let's try single clicking and you'll get an even larger selection. Do you see how that works? Now, what you might want to do is you may want to pause the video and try cranking your tolerance even higher and see if you can get an even better selection. But you know what I'm going to do here is I'm going to leave my selection as it is, even though I don't have the entire object. You'll notice I'm still missing a couple of pieces of my object here. You might have a few other extra pieces missing out of your object. Because I want to show you another cool trick, and this perhaps will remind you of a neat trick I mentioned earlier. Earlier, you saw how to subtract from a selection by holding down Alt or Option, and I mentioned that you could hold down Shift to add to a selection, right? So that's exactly what I'm going to do here. I'm going to hold down the Shift key and then click on the little holes that I see inside my selection. So I clicked once there, that grabbed that guy, and it actually took out another area that I had there, and then I just have this tiny little spot left here. Just holding down Shift and clicking on those little spots there adds them into the selection. Perfect. So I hope you have a nice, decent selection there. There's how to create selections based on color using the Magic Wand tool. I'm sure you're going to find lots and lots of uses for the Magic Wand tool. Okay, now the million-dollar question. We've got them selected, right? We have this object selected. Now what are we going to do with them? Well, next up, I want to show you yet another new command, a command called Free Transform.